Perhaps problems were inevitable. I was a natural scientist, a physicist for that matter, and Tilly was an economist with strong social science roots. We didn't work in those fields, but our college majors said a lot about our thinking. I believed in absolutes. Not in everything, of course, but there are many things that are true regardless of the circumstances. Natural laws, such as gravity. Tilly also believed in truths, but in her mind there was always room for exceptions, even for gravity. It's always true, Till. Gravity is constant. For now, you can't believe that somewhere out there, in this infinite universe, there isn't a single case when it wouldn't work? Never. Then we laughed. Neither of us was able to convince the other, but we enjoyed the exchange. We had a good marriage in that sense. We couldn't compete with Gates or Bezos for money, but I took a job managing big data through actuarial analysis, while Tilly led a 24-person sales team at a regional brokerage that was growing by leaps and bounds. We had enough money for both the present and the future. We owned a nice 4-bedroom house with a backyard pool and hot tub, and shared a mortgage on a house up north with Tilly's sister Margie and her husband Nate. So we had a place to escape to when summer came and the temperatures rose. Our oldest daughter, Annette Annie, started first grade, and our youngest, Kylie, just stopped wearing diapers. They were absolutely adorable, and both energetic and well-mannered. I hinted at a third child, maybe a boy this time, but Tilly wasn't so excited, which was fine. She had to carry children, and after Kylie, it took her almost 2 years to get back to her fighting weight and tone. I understood where her doubts could come from. It definitely wasn't a big deal for me. What about sex? I don't think there is such a thing as bad sex, and I definitely enjoyed our time in bed, and on the sofa, and in the jacuzzi, and in a hammock, although this required special care. You couldn't roam around there too much. We probably weren't the bravest lovers in the world, but we weren't shy either. Our marriage was well-balanced. Sometimes I was on a high, taking more than I gave when I had a big project at work or when Dad had a stroke and Mom needed my help around the house. But I was also often on the downswing, giving more so Tilly could cope with a business trip to see new clients or stay with her sister for a week after Margie's breast cancer diagnosis. I think both of us could say that eventually the scales balanced. So where did we go wrong? The seeds of our discontent were sown from the very beginning of our relationship. We were who we were, but I don't think either of us really believed that in the other. We assumed that our differences were not deep, which is probably why we did not discuss our expectations fully enough. I loved her and she loved me. What else mattered? Much more, as it turned out. At least that's what I'm left with now. Who knows if this is true or not. Tilly always understood people better than I did. Even if we made a wrong turn at the beginning, it took time for it to show. Years, actually. We led fairly blissful lives, yet were unaware of the crack that was gaping under our marriage. Dad, why can't Kylie and I go too? Annie was resourceful and a little spoiled. Tilly and I adored both of our daughters, and we included them much more often than we left them with nannies or our parents. But Tilly was about to be recognized as her firm's CEO for bringing in 3 very large accounts, 1 software titan, and 2 family offices that together controlled more than $2 billion in assets. And we decided to spend the night at the hotel where the celebration was taking place. Because this party is for adults only, honey, but I promise we'll celebrate as a family tomorrow night, okay? I wish I could go with you. I know, darling, but we'll catch up with everything tomorrow night. Fate is too often decided by insignificant details, little things that are like the blood cells flowing through our body, abundant, ubiquitous, and almost insignificant individually. Almost. I parked the car, a dark blue Tilly BMW 5 Series sedan, and we were in the elevator when I realized that I had forgotten my parking ticket. If this had been a municipal parking lot, I would have just paid $5, but this hotel charged $40 for overnight parking. So I kissed Tilly as the elevator reached the lobby, dropped her off, and pressed the button to return to the second level. I walked through the doors with the ticket in my coat pocket about 5 minutes after Tilly entered. I saw that she had taken off her coat and was talking to a tall man in a dark suit and another woman in a bright green silk dress. The woman was long and slender, athletic, but Tilly was brighter. My wife wore high-quality classic clothing and wore it with confidence. Her proportions were almost perfect, both her facial features and her body structure. She looked feminine, with full curves that she maintained with almost an hour of training every day, but it was the intelligence in her eyes, the gaiety in the curve of her lips, that won my heart. And seeing her from across the room, I felt a familiar infatuation for her in my heart, and in other places too. It was fitting that this was the moment when the lie was exposed. I see Tilly didn't bring her husband with her. Do you think Randy will get her again tonight? I was in the wardrobe, and two men turned away as soon as I came in behind them, so they did not notice me. I remembered Ted Masters. He was on Tilly's team for 3 years. I didn't recognize the other man, but I knew Randy. It was a tall man talking to Tilly. I have never experienced anything like what I felt at that moment, neither before nor after. I knew I was in unbearable pain, an agony that might never let me go. The wound was so deep and all-consuming that I wondered if I could survive. I didn't know how I would cope with this, and yet I felt nothing. My instinct of self-preservation kicked in with a vengeance. He blocked out the agony immediately, and although I couldn't hold it in forever, I wasn't going to let myself be humiliated. I don't know if this is true for all men, but I didn't want to show vulnerability in public. My mind was far from clear, but my survival instinct allowed me to make decisions that I now look back on with gratitude. I walked up to Tilly with a gloomy face, which she slowly noticed. "The wardrobe is by the entrance, dear, and could you bring me a glass of white wine on the way back?" I didn't waste time or words. "I'm leaving, Tilly." She looked at me in bewilderment. "I don't want to stop Randy from having you in his bed tonight. Again." Randy choked on the whiskey he had just tasted. Tilly's eyes widened, and she looked at me with wide eyes. But, looking into my eyes, she realized that I knew about her betrayal. Her face changed, and her eyes filled with tears. "Oh, no," she whispered, shocked as I turned and walked away, passing Ted Masters, who had heard everything. He was white as a sheet. "Air," Tilly called. "Wait, please, I'll take my coat and come over now." I ignored her and continued walking. I went down the stairs quickly. I had no intention of running, but I didn't hesitate either. I left the garage without seeing her. The car stayed in the parking lot for such a short time that I didn't even have to pay for parking. Who says the universe doesn't bend toward justice? Thank God the girls stayed with Tilly's parents for the night. While I was driving, I made plans. At worst, I had a 4 or 5 minute head start. If she had apologized to management, I would have had a couple more minutes. If she had to wait for a taxi or order a car, that might give me 10 more minutes. In any case, I couldn't stay at home for long. Like any wounded animal, I wanted to get to a safe place where no one would see my suffering and the shame of how it would break me. Because I knew it would break me. Soon. I needed to pack some things and leave, but I wasn't sure I could do it before Tilly got home. I knew I wasn't working at my full capacity, and I definitely wasn't ready to see her. Then I laughed. I didn't have to go home. I had an overnight bag in the trunk. I didn't want to hide, but I didn't want to make things easier either. I found an ATM and withdrew the maximum, then found the Residence Inn where I paid cash for the night. I turned off my phone and left it in the room as I went to the nearby Red Robin for a burger and salad and some beer on tap. But only one. I never saw the point in drinking too much. The data is clearly against this. I didn't need to punish myself. The pain will take care of that anyway. I stopped at Red Robin. While I was out in public, I thought I could deflect my pain effectively enough to pretend everything would be okay. I was afraid to be alone in my room, but nevertheless, I was drawn there. My facade was on the verge of crumbling. I left the money on the table and left. The waitress would have been delighted with the tip, but I just didn't think I could handle waiting for change. As soon as I was behind the locked door, sobs overwhelmed me. I grabbed a pillow from the bed and wrapped it around my face. From the depths of my torn heart came a howl, and if anyone could hear it, I'm sure it would shake them to their core. I screamed and cried, releasing all the pain that was twisting my guts and tearing my heart. I don't know how long I screamed into that pillow, but when I finally hit the floor, it was soaked with saliva, tears, and snot. I threw her into the corner. There were 3 more pillows on the bed, and 2 more were on the shelf in the closet. I knew I would need at least some of them before I left in the morning. I devastated my husband. "I'm leaving, Tilly. I don't want to stop Randy from having you in his bed tonight. Again." Aaron's voice was cold, but his eyes showed his pain. He knew. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to get closer, hold him close, comfort his grief with my love, but instead, I froze. I don't remember if I said anything at all as our gazes intertwined, but when he turned his back and walked past Ted, I snapped out of my daze. "Air, wait, please. I'll take my coat and come over now." He continued walking. I followed him. I thought about apologizing to Jim and Frank, but work wasn't a priority at the moment. Nothing mattered except Aaron. I quickly walked to the closest to grab my coat and then pressed the button for the elevator to the garage. I know it was no use, but I pushed her every few seconds until the doors opened. Once I was in the garage, it took me a few seconds to see that my car was gone, so I drove back to the hall and out the main doors. Taxis were rare, so I called Lyft through my phone. The blue Prius arrived 4 minutes later. The 20-minute ride felt like the longest of my life. I texted Jim and Frank about Aaron's sudden health problems and expressed my regrets. Responses came immediately, expressing disappointment that we would miss this recognition, but also understanding. They both hoped that Aaron would get better soon. Having completed this task, I returned to Aaron. There were so many thoughts running through my head, but the main one was fear. I knew Aaron saw everything in black and white. This has never been a problem. I loved him for his clarity, for his integrity, and for his intelligence and playfulness, and for his devotion to our girls, and to me, and to our family. But where I saw conventions, he saw confidence. I didn't know what the future held, of course, but I knew it would be much harder for him to move forward than it would have been for me if the circumstances had been the other way around. But of course they wouldn't. His commitment to me was complete. My commitment to him was just as strong, but sexual fidelity seemed irrelevant to our marriage. Sex did not intrude into our time together. He had no influence on my feelings for my husband, which became stronger and fuller every day. I could be completely devoted and still indulge in occasional relationships as long as it didn't affect Aaron or the girls or anyone else in our family. It's not that I'm a slut. I slept with Randy for the first time about a year ago, almost 2 years after he joined the company. And we've only had sex twice since then, always on business trips, and not even on every trip. We've never spent the night together. I never left home thinking about cheating on Aaron. This only happened when the circumstances were right. Most importantly, if I wanted sex. And my potential partner was also interested in some short-term fun. Since I got married, I've only had one other relationship, a one-time one, with a typical salesman from a manufacturing company. So 4 connections in 5 years, just 2 or 3 hours. It's not a big deal at all. I've had many more massages than this, but I knew Aaron wouldn't see it the same way. The house was in darkness when the taxi stopped, and there was no sign that Aaron had been there since we left less than an hour ago. I walked through our home, a home that we filled with Annie and Kylie, that we filled with memories from our families and our lives together. I felt sad and I was scared. I was sad that our memories would now include this wound, and I was afraid of the changes it would bring to our marriage, to our children, to our family. It will take a long time before our lives return to their previous state, if it ever can. I changed into comfortable sweatpants and sheepskin slippers and went to the family room to wait for Aaron. I didn't have any new messages, and we never did that phone-finding thing, so I couldn't tell where he might be. I thought about what to say to him, but couldn't come up with anything. We needed to talk. Despite my reactions at the hotel, I'm good at processing information on the fly, and I'm always more effective when I can see and feel nuances in tone, eye contact, body language. If I could sit across from Aaron, Or, better yet, next to him. I could see and hear and feel his reactions to our conversation. I didn't know if I could convince him of my point of view, but the odds were better in person. So I waited for him, no matter how long it took. But I also wanted him to know that I love him and that he is the most important person in the world to me. I thought for about 15 minutes, starting at least a dozen texts, before I settled on a simple one. Please come home and talk to me. I love you. Then I waited. I slept amazingly well. I became hysterical one more time before falling asleep. It was early when I woke up, but as far as I could tell, I had slept about 9 hours. I think emotional exhaustion is taking its toll. I still felt out of place, like I was dragging my feet through mud, both physically and mentally. I showered but skipped shaving. It was around 7:30 when I decided to stop by the original pancake house. The coffee was fresh and hot, and the pancakes were lighter than I expected. The only thing I didn't like was the sausage patty. She was especially fat. But the bill wasn't even $20, so I left another generous tip. I felt restless. My usual workout is running, but I didn't have any workout clothes, and I completely forgot to bring another pair of shoes. But I didn't want to sit in a hotel room, so I did the best I could, wearing a couple of t-shirts, a shirt from the night before, and a hoodie that I took for the way back, and walked along the park trails near the lakeshore. Apart from a couple of joggers and a mother and 2 boys climbing around the playground, the park was deserted. This gave me a lot of time to think, and I needed to think. I did best when I knew what questions needed answers. Tilly's mind was flexible and processed information at the speed of light. If I didn't have a plan to give me structure and focus for our discussion, I would be at a distinct disadvantage. I had no idea how she could justify her infidelity, but I had no doubt that she would try. I believed that she loved me, or at least I thought so. But I could not reconcile this with her behavior. So I walked, listening to the sound of the water moving slowly towards the shore, smelling the lake and the sleeping grass, earth and trees, breathing the fresh air. So I did what I did best, organized my thoughts into categories, and then tried to formulate the main questions. I brushed aside the trivial, distracting, or unimportant and refined the questions that I hoped would give me the answers I needed. I organized the questions in my head. I clarified them, supplemented them with clarifying phrases, and when I got back to my hotel room, I wrote them down. I didn't plan to read them to Tilly, but writing down the thoughts always cemented them in my mind. First of all, why did she think that she could break her promises, her obligations to me? I had little hope that her answer would be satisfactory, but I still wanted to understand. Secondly, did she put my health at risk by having unprotected sex? If so, she was at best inconsiderate of me, and at worst, reckless. Third, how often did she sleep with Randy, and were there others? She may have tried to soften her answer, but she was essentially an honest person. She was a bad liar, and I was good at detecting lies. Fourth, why Randy? Did she love him? Did she want a relationship with him? Did she want to continue having sex with him? Fifth, how did her colleagues find out about their relationship? Were they shameless? Did they work as work spouses? Was the corporate culture riddled with infidelity? Finally, what does she think we should continue? The path forward won't be entirely her choice, but I was curious to know what she thought about it. I knew I had to face Tilly, and I knew it had to happen today or tomorrow. My priority was protecting the children, and that meant that until Tilly and I decided our path, the girls needed to come home to a home where both parents were present. I felt mentally ready, but I was still nervous. I needed to relax as much as possible, focus as much energy as possible on the conversation, and not waste it on nervousness and distraction. The hotel had a small gym with a treadmill, so I walked around for another hour in jeans, a t-shirt, and shoes. Then I went to Red Robin for a bacon sandwich, lettuce, and coffee. After training and lunch, I was probably as ready as I could be. I woke up on the couch with a sore neck. I checked my phone while I turned my head, but there was nothing important there. I knew Aaron needed to process his feelings, but the longer he remained silent, the harder my task became. I could imagine him vividly, formulating and testing hypotheses, running through scenarios, desperately trying to bring order to what he didn't understand. It was strange for me to be the object of his thoughts. Sad, too. The feeling of guilt weighed on me. I knew that I would be honest when Aaron came to me, and I knew that my honesty would hurt him. I hoped it would also clean his wound. I will not allow lies between us. Lies corrode and infect any close relationship. I could lie to save someone's feelings if it wasn't important, but this was too important. Only the complete truth will work. It might work. Everything depended on Aaron. I made coffee and tried to push the upcoming conversation out of my mind. I was better when others thought I wasn't prepared enough, but anticipating opportunities always left me sluggish. I had the gift of reading the moment and intuitively understanding what issues needed to be addressed, and I quickly articulated my thoughts. So I didn't want to think too much about topics and questions that might not even arise. I wanted to save my energy for what was important. The morning dragged on without a word from Aaron. I called my parents to inquire about the children and asked them to keep the girls for one more night, which they were happy to do. Then Annie wanted to talk to me. Dad said we're going to celebrate today. To celebrate. Sorry, honey, but Daddy isn't feeling well today, but I promise we'll go out as a family as soon as we can. But Dad said tonight. Annie was more like me, but she was her father's daughter in every other way. I know, honey, but sometimes we have to change plans when something happens. We'll go as soon as we can. The silence dragged on until Mom returned to the phone. She giggled. Someone's not happy at all. She's doing that angry look you did. Thanks, Mom. If anyone can handle her, it's you. Nothing a couple of cookies won't solve. Tell Aaron we hope he gets better soon. I'll tell you. Hug Kylie, too. I did the laundry and then tidied up the kitchen. I didn't want to do anything I couldn't quit as soon as Aaron got home. The problem was that there weren't enough small things to keep me occupied, so I started obsessively thinking about Aaron. I kept reminding myself that I couldn't know his reaction until I saw him, so there was no point in worrying about it. But with nothing else to do, I continued to do it. I thought about the shower, but I wanted him to see me as soon as he walked through the door. He needed to know that he was the most important person in the world, to me, now and always. It could have driven me crazy, but waiting for him was a little frotty, so I did it. But it could really drive me crazy. I hate idleness. Having nothing to do to pass the time, I call it upon memories. Memories of Aaron and me. They always made me happy. Our first date, standard dinner and movie. He suggested an Italian restaurant for dinner, a safe choice, and inside Llewyn Davis, a risky choice. We shared a huge lasagna and I took his spaghetti carbonara home. We learned that we both loved the Coen brothers, although I thought Raising Arizona was their best film, while he raved about Barton Fink. To be honest, I never really liked Barton Fink. The first time we made love. My sister Margie and I lived together while I finished my studies. She left for the weekend. We never talked about it, but it was no secret that Aaron and I were going to have sex that night. He came with the Chianti, we ate pizza, and then went to my bedroom. I was a little nervous, and he said he was too, but it didn't show. His proposal. We talked about marriage, and he missed a couple of perfect opportunities. Christmas and New Year. But then he found the perfect way. It was a normal Thursday evening. We were at his apartment, and he cooked his signature dinner for our date. He rented Arrival, and when the film ended, he steered our conversation toward the film's central question. If you knew you were going to be disappointed, would you still take the risk? The film dealt with his daughter's illness, but his conversation focused on a failed marriage. Would you still get married knowing it could end badly? When I said that, I would go out. He got down on his knees, took out the ring and said, "Me too." Prophetic, right? I hoped not. And then, as if I had called upon him, I heard the garage door go up. I sighed 3 times, deeply, deeply, the deepest sigh, and sat down at the kitchen table so that he would see me first as soon as he entered. I opened the garage door to the kitchen and slipped inside. The first thing I saw was Tilly sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked tense. I guess that this was a new situation for her, too. Thank God you're home, honey. I was so worried about you. Are you okay? Is there anything I can help with? Coffee? Lunch? Tilly's words came one after another. Her anxiety was obvious. No, I've already eaten. I'm going to change clothes. We'll talk later. Okay, honey, I'm going to make some scrambled eggs. I was too worried to eat. Are you sure you don't want to? Sure. I glanced into the family room as I walked towards the stairs. The room was the emotional center of our home, but it felt strange. In fact, the whole house felt different. I didn't notice anything special about him. The blanket on the sectional sofa was rumpled. I assumed Tilly had done it. But the usual sense of stability was missing. I always felt most stable when I was at home, but that wasn't the case now. I guess this is another consequence of her betrayal. My home no longer seemed special. Our bedroom also seemed stagnant. I unpacked my bag and hung the suit on a chair that seemed designed for clothes. T-shirts and jeans went into the laundry basket along with my socks and boxers. I put away my toiletries and hung my hoodie in the closet. I wore sweatpants and a long-sleeve T-shirt and added my favorite cotton sweater. I put on my Skechers sneakers and headed back to the kitchen. Tilly was at the stove stirring her eggs, which smelled really good. No cafe has ever been able to replicate these eggs. The girls adored them. I sat down opposite where she had left her mug. Tilly always preferred to sit together when we discussed something important, but this situation was different. We were in opposite corners, which was unsettling, but sitting across from her allowed me to see her reactions. I took a deep breath, quietly, and let it out slowly. I mentally repeated my questions. I was as ready as ever. When Aaron walked in, he looked, well, different. His outfit was mismatched. He wore his brownish-red brogue boots with beige jeans and a green hoodie. And he didn't shave, which was completely unlike him. But it was his eyes that I really noticed. I didn't expect to see the usual joy that always seeped through when he saw me, but there was no anger or pain in them. I saw a distance, an almost clinical detachment. He was in working mode. I needed a husband in spouse mode, in a mode in which we solve problems together, when we decided on something meaningful for our marriage and for our family. I had a serious job. Thank God you're home, honey. I was so worried about you. Are you okay? Is there anything I can help with? Coffee? Lunch? No. I've already eaten. I'm going to change clothes. We'll talk later. Definitely work mode. Okay, honey. I'm going to cook the eggs. I was too worried to eat. Are you sure you don't want to? Sure. He went upstairs. I cooked scrambled eggs with milk and salt, then added some grated Parmesan. The girls loved them like that. Well, Annie loved it. Kylie ate them because her older sister loved them. The scrambled eggs were cooking slowly when Aaron returned and sat down across from me. I heard him exhale slowly. This conversation was too important to start like that. I needed to relax him, sit next to me, so he could feel my love, feel my sincerity. I don't want to do this in the kitchen, Aaron. I'll eat quickly, and we can go to the family room. The family room contained most of our pictures and girls' toys, mementos from our honeymoon, and family treasures from our parents and grandparents. This was our loving place, and he needed to feel that love. And me too. The kitchen is fine. Crap. I couldn't argue with him about it. I didn't want to argue with him about anything. We needed connections, not new breaks. But he didn't make it easy. Okay, but can we wait until I finish eating? I want to give you my full attention. Certainly. I stirred the eggs. Where did you stay last night? Residence Inn. I see you brought the bag home with you. Will you be here tonight? I haven't decided yet. I told Annie that we would go to a restaurant as a family to celebrate your award. I called Mom and asked them to keep the kids one more night. I wasn't sure if you'd come home. I felt Aaron nod. It's good that you did it. How did Annie take the news? I laughed, and I felt him smile, too. Exactly as you think. It was good to talk about girls. I could feel him relax a little. I put the eggs on a plate and then sat down next to Aaron, which surprised him. Encouraged, I touched his forearm. He shuddered. I sighed. I'm sorry, Aaron. He shrugged. I ate quickly without tasting the eggs. After putting the plate and fork in the dishwasher, I refreshed my coffee and sat down next to him again. He gathered his strength and straightened up. Work mode. I have questions about your connection, Tilly. It wasn't a hookup, honey. It was sex. Casual sex, at that. Call it what you want. I consider it a connection. Why did you do that? I see how much I hurt you with my actions, dear, and I will answer all your questions. But it didn't mean anything to me. I want you to understand that it just doesn't matter, neither to me nor to us, but I don't know how to help you understand it. Why did you do this? Same reason why I sometimes order steak for dinner and sometimes have a salad. Randy is attractive, funny, humble. He's just a fun guy. We pulled in a big bill, so we went out to eat, had a few drinks to celebrate, and flirted a little, as always. I wanted sex, and so did he. He raised his eyebrows. I laughed and stood up. We went to his room. I left as soon as we finished. You didn't say why. I said, but I realized that this is our Gordian knot. Typically, our different approaches complemented each other, an enviable strength that served us well no matter the topic. This time, they worked against us. We knew each other well from close observation, but if we wanted to get through this as a team, we needed to immerse ourselves in each other's reality. I needed him to really see that Randy, and that salesman, by the way, was as much of a threat to our marriage as working out at the gym. I'm trying to help you see that my time with Randy was insignificant, like what I order for dinner. It had nothing to do with you, our marriage, our family. We were on a business trip and it just happened. I can argue with almost everything you just said, Till. It's significant. It has to do with me, our marriage, and our family, and it didn't just happen. You made promises to me when we got married. Knowing that you broke them really changes the way I look at things. I've always kept my commitment to you, Aaron. Always. I love you and appreciate you more now than ever. I love you so much that sometimes it overwhelms me. This thing with Randy means nothing. It means everything. What does that mean? I wasn't here. You didn't miss anything. And when I came home, I was just as loving, attentive, supportive, and involved as ever. It didn't change me or our marriage or our family in any way. You lied to me. I didn't lie. I never lied to you about anything important. Withholding the truth about something important is the same as lying about it. Exactly. It didn't matter. I don't tell you when I exercise on a business trip, what I eat for breakfast, what cars I rent. It felt the same. It didn't mean anything. I wouldn't lie to you, darling, about anything. More important. He inhaled slowly and closed his eyes for a moment, regrouping. Did you use a condom? His question surprised me a little. I thought I was making progress in his understanding of the situation, so the change of topic confused me. However, I promised to answer all his questions. It was difficult, but I knew it would come up at some point. Not the first time. After that? Yes. How many times has this happened? I've been with Randy 3 times. Aaron clenched his jaw. On the one hand, I hoped that his anger would cloud his thinking, but on the other hand, ripping the Band-Aid off is usually the best way. He didn't miss my precision. Were you with someone else? Only one other person. Once. Many years ago. I met him at a hotel and we hit it off. No one else but him and Randy. It's clear. He was angry. His eyes were dark and cold, and his face was tense. But now all my secrets are out. I just needed to help him understand how little it meant to everything we had built together. Have you been tested for STDs? What? No. We used a condom with the first guy, but with Randy it was only once without protection. So you put my health at risk. No, honey, no. I'm sure Randy had nothing going on. He wasn't with anyone but his wife. What if he lied? What if she cheats on him like you cheated on me? Oh, I almost answered, but bit my tongue just in time. I hurt him badly. He received his share of vengeance. I sighed. I needed to understand, but it still hurts. It's been over a year since I had unprotected sex, but I'll do the tests if you want. It seems like the least you can do. Okay, I'll arrange it. Whatever makes you feel better. It won't make me feel any better, but it's one less thing to worry about. He frowned, then relaxed and nodded quickly. So you've had sex with Randy 3 times in the last year? Yes, but it's not what you imagine. It was never planned. We must have been on a dozen trips together during that time. When it happened, it was simply because we were both in the mood for it. We only did it one time at a time. We never spent the night together. We never rented a room together. Are you in love with Randy? In love? God, no. I mean, I could never love him or anyone else. You are my man, my partner, the love of my life. But you're having sex with Randy and another guy. I sighed again. How could I convince him to move past sex and see that there was never an ounce of love in it? It was fun. How to go to a movie or a concert. I was so sad to see him so upset, and because of me, I had to find the words that would heal him. I don't know how to make you understand that each of these times was nothing at all, just scratching an itch. What can I do to help you understand? I understand. You think sex can be casual, without affection, without emotion. Yes, you can see it. I felt my insides being untied. Maybe we can overcome this crisis. I see that. I just don't agree. Come on, darling. Sometimes we make love tenderly and sweetly, and sometimes we don't do it like crazy. Sex can be done in many different ways, it can be many different things and cover many different areas. Yeah, but no matter how we do it, I always do it with you. And only you. That makes it special. It's special to me, too. I love sex with you. It's wonderful. So satisfying. But you have sex with other guys, too. He's still stuck. I didn't know how many ways I could say it, but I had to keep trying. And that means nothing to me. It means something to me. He put his hand over his mouth and squinted, concentrating. Regroup again. I was about to speak when he beat me to it. How many people know about this? What do you mean? Nobody knows about it. He snorted. People definitely know about it. Do you think I found out? Of all the questions he could have asked, this was the one I hadn't even thought about. It never occurred to me. It was enough that Aaron knew. I thought he'd deduced it since he was so good at it, but I never thought anyone else could have told him. I was stunned. Who told you? Nobody told me. I overheard Ted Winters talking about it to another guy last night. It didn't seem to be a secret to them. Wow. I was stunned. Did my colleagues know? This could have turned into a full-blown disaster. I immediately saw the consequences. My professional reputation was at serious risk. At least some of my team knew that I slept with a subordinate, and this could lead to problems with HR, which in turn could lead to disciplinary action from Jim and Frank. What about Randy? His wife was standing with us when Aaron dropped his bombshell, so he may also have been having his own marital crisis at the moment. And people can behave strangely under stress. I shook my head. I loved my job, but it was just a job after all. I'd sort out the work once Aaron and I sorted out our issues. Aaron was my husband, my true love, my anchor, my partner. We needed to fix our marriage. Nothing else mattered as much as this. I really needed to appeal to his love for me, to show him that nothing had changed between us because of my connections. Darling, it doesn't matter who else knows, and I see how you suffer. I want to help you heal your pain. You caused this pain, Tilly. I don't trust you to ease it. His words made my heart freeze in my throat. Before I could answer, he said, "What do you see happening here? God bless." His question put me on the most solid ground possible. I love you now more than ever, Air, and tomorrow I will love you even more. It's just noise, darling. I know it hurts, but I can heal this pain with love. It's nothing compared to love. We feel for each other. With the family we've built together, we still have our wonderful future ahead of us, everything we've always talked about. I know you're hurting and that we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm confident, like never before, that we are destined to spend our lives together? He didn't answer. He looked into the distance, and his face remained impassive. Let's go to the family room and sit together. I miss your touch, your hugs. We always feel better when we touch. You will see that nothing has changed. I'm fine here. He didn't move, and I don't mean in the kitchen. He hasn't budged from his work routine, and it won't work. We haven't seen the world the same way, and we never will. I couldn't bridge the intellectual gap. I needed to make him see that our feelings were important, our emotional connections, and that they were strong and enduring. He was in a lot of emotional pain, and it could only be healed with emotional support. He won't be able to rationalize his recovery. Darling, your pain is raw and overwhelming right now. Please don't withdraw into yourself. Let me help you find your center. Feel my support. He stood up, so I stood up with him. Then he struck me down. I won't make any decisions right now. I need time to think. I'll let you know when I'm ready to discuss this further. Who told you? Nobody told me. I overheard Ted Winters talking about it to another guy last night. It didn't seem to be a secret to them. Wow, I was stunned. Did my colleagues know? This could have turned into a full-blown disaster. I immediately saw the consequences. My professional reputation was at serious risk. At least some of my team knew that I slept with a subordinate, and this could lead to problems with HR, which in turn could lead to disciplinary action from Jim and Frank. What about Randy? His wife was standing with us when Aaron dropped his bombshell, so he may also have been having his own marital crisis at the moment, and people can behave strangely under stress. I shook my head. I loved my job, but it was just a job after all. I'd sort out the work once Aaron and I sorted out our issues. Aaron was my husband, my true love, my anchor, my partner. We needed to fix our marriage. Nothing else mattered as much as this. I really needed to appeal to his love for me, to show him that nothing had changed between us because of my connections. Darling, it doesn't matter who else knows. You know, and I see how you suffer. I want to help you heal your pain. You caused this pain, Tilly. I don't trust you to ease it. His words made my heart freeze in my throat. Before I could answer, he said, "What do you see happening here?" God bless. His question put me on the most solid ground possible. I love you now more than ever, Air. And tomorrow I will love you even more. It's just noise, darling. I know it hurts, but I can heal this pain with love. It's nothing compared to love. We feel for each other with the family we've built together. We still have our wonderful future ahead of us. Everything we've always talked about. I know you're hurting and that we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm confident like never before that we are destined to spend our lives together. He didn't answer. He looked into the distance, and his face remained impassive. Let's go to the family room and sit together. I miss your touch, your hugs. We always feel better when we touch. You will see that nothing has changed. I'm fine here. He didn't move, and I don't mean in the kitchen. He hasn't budged from his work routine, and it won't work. We haven't seen the world the same way, and we never will. I couldn't bridge the intellectual gap. I needed to make him see that our feelings were important, our emotional connections, and that they were strong and enduring. He was in a lot of emotional pain, and it could only be healed with emotional support. He won't be able to rationalize his recovery. Darling, your pain is raw and overwhelming right now. Please don't withdraw into yourself. Let me help you find your center. Feel my support. He stood up, so I stood up with him. Then he struck me down. I won't make any decisions right now. I need time to think. I'll let you know when I'm ready to discuss this further. I wanted to go back to the park. I loved being outside, especially when I needed to burn off my energy, but I went out without a jacket, and the last days of autumn were approaching. So I went to the mall and walked through the hallways on each level. Twice. Then I picked up a piece of pepperoni from Slice Brothers. It wasn't great, but damn. I had all the answers that mattered. Tilly had sex with Randy, but she wasn't going to run away with him. She seemed sincere about still loving me. But she had sex with Randy several times and a stranger once, so how could I really tell? And the frequency with Randy increased, although 3 cases was not enough to be very sure. But practice makes perfect. They probably became more aware of what fueled their desire to have sex with each other, and consciously or unconsciously, they probably did more of those things. Tilly seemed genuinely surprised that other people knew about her affairs, but the fact remained that other people knew that she was cheating on me. It wasn't the main thing, but it was important. Nobody wants to look like a fool. If we had stayed married, I would have seen these people from time to time. She had unprotected sex at least once, clearly not thinking about her husband, faithfully waiting for her at home. She claimed to love me, but her actions made the consequences of that love murky for me. Everything I heard pointed to casual, convenient sex on her part, which I basically understood. I understood the principle, but damn, I just didn't understand how anyone thought sex wasn't important enough to limit it to intimate relationships. I wouldn't judge others if they came to an explicit agreement with their partner, but my partner never pursued that agreement. We discussed exclusivity at the beginning of our relationship and we agreed. But either we didn't define it well enough, or Tilly sensed that there was a loophole somewhere that I couldn't see. She wanted to move forward, stay in the marriage, but it sounded like nothing had happened, that the emphasis was on moving me through my pain, essentially ignoring responsibility for her wrongdoings, probably because she didn't think of them as misdeeds. So now what should I do? I loved Tilly, always loved. We were on the same page about everything. Well, in almost everything. We were closely intertwined. Separating us would be incredibly painful and incredibly difficult on every level. We were best friends, we had small children together, families who we loved and who loved us. It's the same with friends, house, share in the dacha, investments, retirement plans, and all the dreams we shared. Divorce would be terrible, the process and consequences of both. I couldn't see anything good in divorce, but once it was completed, I could regain my confidence and perhaps find a partner who better aligned with my values. It wasn't a guaranteed outcome by any means, but I was a decent guy, sincere, hardworking, reliable. There had to be women who would appreciate it enough to remain faithful. Tilly's betrayal struck me very deeply. I was completely and utterly lost at how she thought she was allowed to cheat on me. And while she seemed genuinely sorry for my pain, I never heard her apologize for sleeping with these guys. She just said it didn't mean anything. The pain I felt last night had subsided now, but I knew it would come back again and again. The feelings of inferiority, stupidity, rejection were drained, exhausted, but they were gathering again, and when they gained enough strength, they would return in full force. I hoped that these feelings would subside over time, but I did not share Tilly's belief that they could be healed. And I knew I could never trust her not to cheat again. Trust. Every relationship is built on a foundation of trust. Will you fulfill what you promised me? We risk our time, money, feelings when we believe in someone, when we trust them. I trusted Tilly completely. I honored my obligations to her. She didn't do the same for me. This tipped the scales of our marriage heavily in her favor, and I couldn't think of any way to restore the balance. I didn't mean to change. Sex for me was as emotional as it was physical, so if I cheated, it would mean that my commitment to Tilly no longer mattered. And this is how I saw Tilly's betrayal, as her refusal to commit to me. I wanted her to convince me that we should stay married. I needed this because I didn't see it myself. I needed to talk to her again. I went home. I took a shower after Aaron left. I ate a slice of toast with rhubarb jam that his mother sent him at the end of the summer. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and waited. I tried not to think too much about our situation, but my thoughts still raced forward. I just had to find a way to get through to Aaron. For me, for him, for our children. How can I make him see that what is important is our marriage, our family? Sex with Randy and that salesman was nothing compared to this, not even just by comparison. I never thought about it once it was over. A couple of hours had passed since he left when I heard the garage door again. I quickly put my plate, knife, and coffee cup in the dishwasher and hurried to the family room. We won't have another conversation sitting at the kitchen table. Our family rooms were set up with a sectional sofa in an L shape, and the TV and shelves with all of our family's important books and knickknacks faced the open end. We had no other place to sit in the room. I sat in the middle of the sectional, so no matter where he sat, Aaron would be within reach. Feeling my love through my touch will help him see my dedication to him and our family. Till, here. Aaron hesitated when he saw me, then walked over and sat down in the seat closest to the door. I smiled at him. I couldn't help but smile. I loved this man. He gave me a formal nod and then looked away. His pain just radiated off of him. I carefully placed my hand on his shoulder. He tensed, but didn't pull away. I squeezed and returned my hand. Small steps. Where did you go? In the mall. Can I get you something to drink? No, thanks. Fine. I looked at him, waiting, but he never looked up. What are you thinking about, dear? Aaron shrugged. I just don't understand. Why? I already told you it's nothing, honey. Nothing at all. Definitely nothing that concerns you. This concerns me, Till. That's it. No, Aaron, you were here, I was there, and it meant absolutely nothing to me. He nodded bitterly. That's it, I guess. A difference I've never noticed before. When we're not together, I still think of us together. Inseparable even when distance separates us. And how does that make sense, darling? We can't be inseparable when we're not together. I smiled when I said this. I thought literalism was your thing. Are you kidding about this? Banter had always been our way of breaking tension, but we were much further along than I feared. This realization shocked me. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do here, Air. I'm confused, trying to show you how unimportant it is. I feel like our marriage is in jeopardy. I see you suffering and it hurts me. But I don't know what to say to fix everything. Why did you do this? He was so focused on sex that he didn't hear what I was saying. So I repeated it. I already told you, honey, I wanted sex. Randy wanted sex. Circumstances came together and it just happened. It didn't mean anything. Aaron sighed and it seemed to drain all his energy. He usually sat up straight, but now he just shrank. It means nothing to you. It means a lot to me. Why? I almost screamed with disappointment. It had nothing to do with you at all. If you hadn't heard Ted last night, you would still be happy with our marriage, right? He shrugged. Yes, you would. You know that. And I'm still the same woman, still your wife, still devoted to your happiness and our family. I'm exactly the same as I was yesterday when you were happy with me. I don't understand how you can't see this. And I don't understand how you can't see that, while you may still be the same woman you were yesterday. I thought you were still the same woman I married before you slept with anyone. Except me. You promised to be faithful, Till, and you weren't. You promised. But I was faithful. I never loved anyone but you, Aaron. Always. It was true when we met, when we got engaged, when we got married. Every single day since I met you, I've never loved anyone else. I thought our conversation was finally going somewhere, but Aaron looked more and more sad. He nodded, but it was a tired nod. He was about to get up, but I moved faster, wrapping my arms around him. I pressed my forehead against his shoulder. No, stay with me. We can fix this. We have to fix this. He relaxed enough to remain seated, but remained tense enough to not merge with me. There's nothing to fix, Till. I see our marriage has always been like this. What does it mean? To me, our commitment to each other was complete. Emotional, intellectual, spiritual, and physical. You never thought so. You are emotionally committed to me, perhaps even intellectually and spiritually, but not physically. We were never in balance till I thought we were, but we weren't. And I don't see how we can achieve balance. But we're in balance, darling. I know you love me. I feel it every day. And I love you just as much. No, you don't love. Otherwise, you wouldn't cheat. This again. Aaron was a smart guy. Why couldn't he understand this? I needed to make him understand this. What I did with Randy and that other guy really had nothing to do with you. As soon as it was over, it went out of my head. They don't matter to me at all. What matters is you. I love you more than anyone. I met you. You are my ideal partner. Tilly, I carried our marriage with me everywhere. It merged with me, with my personality. You and the children, but especially you, were always in my thoughts when I had to make a decision. I chose everything, thinking about you. Everything. When I was deciding what to have for lunch, I was thinking about what we had planned for dinner. When someone asked me if I wanted tickets to a game, I checked my calendar to see if we had plans. Then I thought about what you might want to do with me at that time, and only if there was no possible conflict did I think about whether I wanted to go there. It was automatic. But when you decided to sleep with someone else, where were your thoughts about me? The best case is that you didn't think about me at all, because if you did and continued anyway, you'd just be a calculating bitch. And I don't think that's what you are. Calculating bitch? This hit me right to the heart. This is more painful than anything I could imagine. Tears came to my eyes. He was so far from the truth. I really loved him, more than anything else. How can I convince him of this? Aaron, you must know how much I love you. You must. Open your heart, my love. There you will see the truth. I don't think I want to see what's in my heart right now, Till. Trust your feelings, Air. Look into your heart and you will see the truth of how much I love you. Love is not the only feeling there, Till. And not even the most important thing. There is also pain, anger, fear, and grief. A lot of grief. But why? I hugged him forcefully again, but he remained sitting still. Let me in, Air. Let me in. We can heal this. We can. I will heal, and you will no doubt be part of that process, but I don't see that happening right now. We're out of balance, Till. And until I figure out if we can ever restore balance, I can't be with you. He carefully released my hands, then stood up. I'll pack a few things. I'll let you know where I'm staying. It was a real nightmare. I watched him leave, his entire appearance expressing defeat. We had to fix this, but he had to want to fix it, and he didn't seem to want to. I was upset, worried, scared. How can I reach him? I returned to the residence inn. I sent Tilly a message when I checked in again. I listened to her, and I heard everything she said and didn't say. For Tilly, emotional commitment was all that mattered. She truly believed that sex with other men was essentially unimportant, something that happened away from our marriage. She returned home believing that she was still faithful to me because this sex never invaded her feelings for me, for our children, for our family. Sex was separate, outside of our obligations and plans. I never suspected her cheating because she had no guilt about it. To her, it was just sex, and no different from going out for drinks with friends, but this did not at all correspond to what I considered marriage. I was open to reconciliation, but I just didn't see how we could achieve it. I have never cheated on Tilly, so the only way to move forward with her is to accept her cheating and forgive her for it. And it always left the scales of our marriage tipped. Combine that with her lack of remorse and her philosophy that there are always exceptions in life. I wasn't sure she wouldn't do it again, and I knew I couldn't stand it. She didn't feel like she had betrayed me, but I felt it, and the pain it caused seemed bottomless. How to handle this as a partner looking for sex somewhere else? The person whose love is most important to you. You built every aspect of your life around her and your marriage, making a promise to be with her for life, creating children and a home to share. You trust her with your fears and insecurities, knowing that she loves you despite them, and that love manifests itself in sharing your bodies with each other. It is a tangible expression of your mutual love. You know she only loves you because she only makes love to you. Until you find out that protecting and respecting your love is not that important to her. Until you find out that you are not enough for her. Until you find out that you didn't even deserve the thought of her getting horny after her professional success. Until you know that she won't give up casual physical pleasure for the sake of your marriage. The gap between your expectations and her behavior is huge, and the pain generated by this gap is correspondingly huge. I screamed my emotional pain into the pillows again that night, and many nights after that. This was the only way to free myself from it, and it left me exhausted. I talked to my boss and explained in general terms that my marriage seemed to be ending and that I needed time to get over it. Maxine was always sympathetic, and this time was no exception. She simply asked me to keep an eye on my email while I did what I needed to do. We did go with the girls to celebrate Tilly's promotion, and their enthusiasm helped us keep dinner light and mostly normal. We drove home together, and Tilly and I got the girls ready for bed as usual. Once they were in bed and had been kissed a few times, I grabbed my jacket. "When are you coming home, Air?" "I don't know." "I miss you." "Yes, too." "Can we talk about this?" "I don't think there's anything else to discuss. I know what you're thinking." "Now I just need to figure out what I think." "Come home, honey. Let's figure this out together, like we always have. You know, we make a great team. It won't work this time, Till." I actually went to the house after work every evening and morning on my days to get the girls ready. We wanted to keep things as normal as possible for them for as long as possible. The weekend was more difficult, but we managed. I arrived before Annie and Kylie woke up. They could no longer surprise us in bed, but with everything else constant for them, they didn't seem to notice. I felt myself moving away from Tilly, and she felt it too. She begged me to come home, tried to convince me that we could move forward together like always. She even surprised me one night after we put the girls to bed. "Let's go to counseling, honey. We're stuck, and we need help. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll just leave us forever." I found it interesting that she thought I was abandoning her when I felt like she was never as invested in our marriage as I was. My second thought was that our different perspectives were a great reason to try therapy. She found a consultant, and after a quick glance at online reviews and her qualifications, I agreed. Pratishta Bhandari was an earthy woman, large, but with bright and active eyes and a soothing voice in which there was just a hint of an accent. Her manner was not entirely direct. She took the time to explore our thoughts and feelings on any issue under discussion, but she did not hesitate to ask questions that attacked the heart of the matter once the preliminary work was completed. And she was very articulate and precise in her language, especially regarding emotions. It was towards the end of our second session when Pratishta brought us to a breaking point. We talked about our history together and my recent realization of Tilly's infidelity. There were no surprises for either of us, but Pratishta was shaping the contours of our marriage in her mind. "Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that you, Tilly, believe that your promises to Aaron remained intact because sex with other men did not affect your emotional commitment to him," Pratishta said. Tilly nodded and smiled. "Yes, and you, Aaron, believe that she broke those promises because for you they included physical fidelity, not just emotional." "Yes. And Tilly, you don't think you need to apologize because you don't think you did anything to apologize for?" Tilly frowned. "No. I'm sorry for hurting Aaron. I'm sorry for that. I want him to forgive me for hurting him." "So you regret having sex with other men because it hurt Aaron?" "Exactly. I'm very sorry about that. I never meant to hurt my husband." "Aaron, how do you feel about what Tilly is saying?" "I know she's sorry for hurting me. She's not a monster. She knows she hurt me, badly, and she's made it clear she's sorry for hurting me. But she's never apologized for the actions that caused this pain because she doesn't consider them wrong." "This is wrong," Tilly exclaimed. "I'm really sorry about that. I didn't mean to hurt you." "Tilly, it's Aaron's turn to share his thoughts and feelings. You'll get your chance too." "No, I'm done. She only regrets those actions because they hurt me. She doesn't consider them a betrayal in and of themselves. I do. And that tells me she can do it again. I don't know if I can. I will overcome this pain now. It will kill me if I face this again. But I won't do it again." "Tilly, you are you. A wonderful, smart, warm woman, but you believe in exceptions, in choices. There are no absolutes, right? But it's a solid absolute for me. Always has been, which is why it hurts so much to find out that you're not one of them. Our marriage is the way I feel about it, and if I have to defend myself against you, well, that's not the marriage I want. You're not a bad person, Tilly, but I don't think you're the right wife for me. Darling, please give me a chance. I can do this. Can you really believe that there will be no exceptions for the rest of your life? That absolutely no circumstances will cause you to consider sex with another man? Tilly has always been honest. Maybe not always fully disclosing information, but honest. And I saw in her eyes the exact moment when she thought about possible expulsion. And she saw in my eyes that I saw it, and I think she knew at that very moment that we were done. I can't believe we're divorced. Aaron and I were soulmates, absolutely perfect for each other. But now we are no longer married. I witnessed all of this from the very beginning of that terrible night in the hotel, and every day it seemed that we were falling deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. I still can't really understand what happened, and all because of the most insignificant reasons. I had never given anyone even an ounce of the love I felt for Aaron. Never. I was sure that consultations would help us. Pratishta helped us see our differences, but where I was confident we could overcome it, Aaron saw no way forward. And it seems he just stopped trying. I begged and begged him to come home, to make love to me, to trust in the cocoon of love we had built for us and our children, but he was adamant. I see possibilities. I always saw it, and I'm creative. So when Aaron asked me if I could ever see an exception to staying true to me, of course I could come up with one. In fact, I came up with several almost immediately. Plane crash victims, forced to save the life of Annie, Kylie, or Aaron, exchange of partners with Aaron's consent, and perhaps that same sudden passion. I'm sure I could come up with more. But these were exceptions. By definition, the likelihood of their occurrence was extremely low. I tried to explain this, but the chance is not zero, Till, and with every possible exception added, the overall risk of you sleeping with someone else again increases. I can't live with this hanging over our marriage. I can't. You ruined me, Tilly. I don't have the reserves to survive another blow. And so, he destroyed me in return. I was depressed for many months after he filed for divorce, but I had to put on my adult pants every day to support our girls and win clients for our firm. I didn't have the luxury of being discouraged, and since I'm a proponent of the fake it till you make it approach, I put on my best face every day. But nights in my bed alone were hard, and when Aaron took the girls, we shared custody, alternating weeks between us. I ate many pints of mint chocolate chip, and she cried. A lot of. It wasn't easy for Aaron either. I knew him so well, and I saw his deep sadness. His cheerful, easy manner was lost, and he looked thoughtful and even lost when he was not talking to someone. But no matter how often I begged him to come back to me, he wouldn't agree. I finally realized that he needed to come back to me of his own free will. Nothing I could say would make a difference. And perhaps then, I saw how much I had hurt him. He always turned to me for advice, trusted my opinion, at least until then. And now he doesn't trust me. Randy was long fired by the time I was ready to date. He also got divorced. His wife Trish heard Aaron clearly that night. Randy was caught off guard and couldn't frame the news in a way that would help him. He had much less success with his divorce than we did with ours. Aaron and I separated amicably, and we remained friendly for the sake of the kids. But Trish gave Randy absolute hell. They also had young children, but she got custody and he got the bill. He left our company when a sales manager position opened up at a competitor, but he had to move to Chicago for the job. I felt as sorry for him as I did for myself. The sex wasn't worth the price, but I wondered why it was so high for all of us. I didn't face any consequences at work. I told Jim and Frank the sanitized version of the reason for my divorce and assured them that I would not put the company at risk again. They let me know they were disappointed, but I was making money for them, and I'm sure they turned a blind eye to it, more because of that than because of any favor they felt towards me. I started dating about a year after the divorce was finalized. Men started asking me out as soon as news of my impending divorce broke. But it took me a year to accept that my marriage was probably over. I felt very lonely, so I dove back into the water, agreeing to lunch dates with several different men. I didn't sleep with any of them, although I really wanted to. I still hoped that Aaron would come back, and I wanted to be able to tell him that I had remained faithful. The irony was not lost on me, not true when we were married, but true when it ended. Sex still didn't matter to me, but it clearly did to Aaron, and I wanted to have something of value to give him if he decided to come back to me. A year after our breakup, it seemed like Aaron had found his center in life. I didn't know if he was seeing anyone. We didn't discuss dating, and although I never asked the girls directly, their stories about their time with Aaron didn't include any women. But he seemed settled when we saw each other, and if he didn't seem entirely happy, he at least seemed content. I gave up hope for us at that time, which helped me be open to other people. Which brings me to Bob. We met through work. He had a family office, and I convinced him of our services. I invited him to dinner to celebrate the deal, and then he invited me to dinner to talk more personally. He had been a widower for 4 years, 10 years older than me, with no children. He wasn't against them. His wife could not conceive. He mourned her for 2 years, and then slowly opened his heart. I could relate to this with understanding. Bob healed me in many ways. I will always bear the scar of Aaron's rejection, but Bob was gentle and considerate and funny. He was not a handsome man. He was ordinary, not big or small, not particularly noticeable, but his heart was big and warm, and it just enveloped me. He also saw things in shades of gray and said he couldn't imagine how a perfect marriage could be ruined by a couple of incidents of minor sex. I didn't know how I would feel if Aaron was the first of the two of us to move on with a new partner, so I was very nervous before I told him that Bob and I were going to move in together. Our conversation was an anticlimax. Aaron was polite. "I'm glad you found someone, Till," he smiled at me, genuinely happy. "You've always had great taste in partners, so I'm sure he's a good person." I couldn't help myself. I rushed to him and hugged him, but he tensed in my embrace. I sighed inside. He will never get rid of the pain I caused him. Bob and I bought a 4-bedroom house not far from where Aaron and I previously lived. We wanted a new beginning. During and after the divorce, I stayed in our old house to keep things as normal as possible for the kids, and Aaron bought a 3-bedroom apartment not far from there in the same school district. The kids brought Bob into our scheme almost seamlessly. I think mostly because he was so easy to handle and because Annie was still a couple of years away from teenage rebellion. I still think about Aaron often. I want him to be happy. Hopefully one day he will. I try not to think about what could have been, if only. If only it were more flexible. If only he had been more open. If only he would allow me to help him heal his pain. But then he probably wouldn't be Aaron, my ideal partner, my almost perfect partner. I met Bob, but never spoke to him for more than basic pleasantries when picking up or dropping off the girls. He seemed like a decent guy, maybe a little boring, which, considering my personality, was kind of funny. I was at their house for Kylie's 8th birthday, and we were the only men there. Tilly and a few other moms were keeping an eye on the dozen or so little imp girls running around the yard, and neither they nor the kids needed 2 old men, so we sat on the patio in folding chairs and watched the commotion. We discussed the twins' woes, predicted the Vikings' chances, complained about last week's heat, and that exhausted our innocuous topics. We were silent for a minute or two, drinking our Molsons, when Bob spoke. "I don't want to embarrass you, Aaron, but how could you let Tilly go? I mean, look at her. She's beautiful, smart, funny. She's a wonderful mother, an amazing cook, and an incredible lover. She's the whole package." I've thought about this a lot in the years since our marriage ended. He was right in his observations. Tilly was an impressive woman. She also tore me apart, and it took me a couple of years of therapy to realize that I was better off without the doubts she brought into my life. A partner should make life easier, smooth it out, lift you up. Doubts about a partner are insidious. They poison every moment, adding stress instead of removing it. I couldn't live with it, and my sadness over the loss of my marriage kept me from seeing this truth for some time. But as soon as I saw her, I felt such peace. I shrugged. We just weren't the right partners for each other. I'd like to think I would fight for someone like her rather than let her go. Well, I hope you never have to do that, Bob. He shook his head. He didn't understand it either. I smiled and drank from my bottle. They were a better couple than Tilly and I ever were. This thought didn't bother me. Despite the pain I felt because of her betrayal, I didn't want her to suffer. She didn't intend to hurt me. She just wasn't the right partner for me. Besides, I had my own secret. I met Deirdre, Dee, about 9 months ago. Since Tilly and I got divorced, I've been involved in self-improvement, taking cooking classes, joining a book club, and buying a road bike. Dee and I met on a group ride, and we were traveling at about the same speed, so we spent most of the ride together. We sat next to each other for coffee at the end of the trip, and then did it again 2 weeks later. She was witty and knowledgeable about many things that also interested me, so I invited her on a walk through the art museum, and then to lunch the following Sunday. This led to dinners, movies, and, after 5 evening dates, sex. Very good sex. Dee was a project manager at Verizon, divorced for 6 years with a 10-year-old daughter, which put Nadine between Annie and Kylie. Tall and thin, Dee usually brimmed with playful energy, but was all business when it came time to get things done. As you'd expect from a project manager who was basically a single mother, her ex-husband saw Nadine every 2 weeks. She was hyper-organized and a bit bossy. We shared a surprising number of interests. The Strokes and Muse were on both of our playlists. Pulp Fiction was at the top of our list of best films. I loved it for Willem Dafoe and Dee for Uma Thurman, and we were pragmatically progressive in politics. We live in Minnesota, after all. When we were together, we found that time passed without us noticing it, and we were both proponents of monogamy. We kept the profile low, mainly to make sure we were compatible before getting the kids involved. I don't know how long Tilly dated Bob before introducing him to the girls, but I wanted to be sure that Dee and I were in a long-term relationship before taking this step. And we were almost ready. Dee and I drove to Duluth to meet my parents at their summer cottage a couple of weeks ago. She charmed them, and we left feeling their support. We didn't want to take away the spotlight from Kylie's birthday, so we decided to wait until next week to tell our daughters. We weren't sure when we'd have our in-person meeting, but it won't be too long after that. So, what is next? Who really knows? The end of my marriage to Tilly was as terrible as I feared, but I felt both stronger and wiser on the other side of that terrible journey. I felt safe and completely settled with Dee. No matter from what angle I looked at our relationship, it was true, balanced, and I liked the chances of keeping it that way. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. 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 To the next